5 tips to get maximum flex out of the scx24. Tip number 1 is going to be shocks. Long travel shocks are what's going to give you that crazy axial drop. The longer the shocks, the more axial drop you're going to get and the more articulation you're going to gain. Tip number 2, where you mount those shocks. I like to mount them to the frame. Again, the lower down on the chassis you mount them, the more your axles are going to drop. Tip number 3, trim the fenders. So when you get all that articulation and all that movement, you're going to collide with your fenders. That's why I trim my body so that my tires can typically clear the fenders. Tip number 4 is kind of a two-parter. This has to do with your linkage, your suspension linkage. I like to do a 4-link conversion in the front. I also like to take one O-ring out of each mounting position. Taking one O-ring gives you a lot more movement in your linkage. Tip number 5 doesn't really have to do with articulation itself, but it has to do with frustration that comes about by articulation. So a limiting strap in the front, and all it does is just control that front end drop so it doesn't get too extreme.